Fit to Love is physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness to achieve the happy life you deserve. From exercise to cooking, relationships, and spirituality, you'll find all the inspiration you need right here with our host, JJ Flizanes.
Hello and welcome to Fit to Love Tasty Tuesdays, all about cooking, all about nutrition, and all about you. If there's something you'd like to see on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at info@invisiblefitness.com. Enjoy the show. Today's show, homemade kale chips. So I need to stress the homemade part because a lot of the kale chips that you buy at Whole Foods or at the market have been dehydrated by a dehydrator, and they have a cheesy or flavorful sort of coating on them that's made with raw nuts and different spices, and I've attempted that. I had a dehydrator and I played with all of that, and I haven't perfected that yet. So when you buy those cheesy like kale chips at the store, I love them, and this isn't going to be them. This is going to be a more simple version without the coating, the really thick coating. So first we're going to use curly kale instead of, let's say, Tuscan kale. So what you saw me put in the soup last week was the really dark green leafy Jacinto or Tuscan kale. There are all different kinds of kale. There's red kale, baby kale, curly kale. And what we've determined is the thicker farmer's market curly kale are the best for really firm kale chips. The thinner the kale is, the more flimsy it's going to be. So Tuscan kale would be great for this too, but I'm going to use curly kale today. So curly kale just looks like this. It's curly on the ends. It's green and leafy. It's not too dark and green. That's the Jacinto or Tuscan kale. So I'm going to take my washed curly kale and dump it into my bowl. Now the trick with doing kale chips that aren't too soggy is to use just the slightest amount of olive oil or coconut oil. And I'm going to use, again, my organic garlic olive oil from Trader Joe's. And it's just a little bit. Just a little bit. Boom, that's probably even too much. Because the trick to kale is you need to massage it with your fingers, which is why I'm not wearing any rings. My hands are washed. I'm going to get in there and massage the kale. But before I do that, I'm going to add my spices so that way I'm not having dirty hands putting in my spices. So let's go through what I'm going to use. And again, you can do this to taste. Whatever you love, you can add to it. And if you don't like some of the things that I'm putting on there, then omit them. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to be black pepper. I'm going to do black peppercorn because I love pepper. And on this recipe today, because I've done this enough times and played with some of these spices and additives, and the additive, not like a true additive, but I'm going to use nutritional yeast, because to me, this is like a cheesy flavor. It actually adds some amino acids to it, a little bit of B vitamins, but it kind of has a little bit of a salty flavor as well. And I used this with some salt in a previous cooking class, and it was too salty. So I would leave out the salt for now if you're going to use nutritional yeast. If you're not going to use nutritional yeast, and you can use cheese, if you use Parmesan cheese, again, don't use the salt, just use the Parmesan cheese. If you don't use any cheese, go ahead and add a little bit of salt. Salt does bring out the flavor in foods. And salt, even though it's probably a myth I need to do on a future Wellness Wednesday, salt isn't so bad for you. Maybe the table salt, which has no minerals in it, but high mineral salt actually can give you iodine and minerals. So don't be so afraid of salt thinking, oh, it's so bad for my blood pressure. If you're someone who eats pretty cleanly, salt's not a big deal. But if you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, you eat not very well, then of course salt's going to probably help in swelling out your joints. But if you're eating inflammatory foods and you have salt, yes, it's going to make it worse. So maybe cut out the inflammatory foods and keep your high mineral, really good quality salt. So after my black pepper, I'm going to add turmeric. Again, turmeric's going to be a great antioxidant for us. It's going to give us sort of another like cheesy, nice, I don't know what to say, like smooth kind of flavor. It has a certain flavor. It's not too strong. It's not spicy. It's not hot. Again, it's a great antioxidant. So here's another way you can get this into your diet. But it's going to be really yellow on my hands. So I'm going to put that in there. And then, of course, what would JJ be doing if she wasn't using garlic powder? So I'm going to use the rest of what's left in my garlic powder, even though I know I have garlic oil in here. Oh, well, it looks like we're out. So we'll have to grab the new one later, but I'll omit that for now. but I would use it. And then I'm gonna use a little cayenne because I like spicy things. Spicy foods are actually very good for digestion. Spicy foods help with your metabolism, stimulating your nervous system. So in case you're one of those people who've heard that myth that spicy foods burn a hole in your stomach, yeah, that's totally not right. Spicy foods have a lot of properties that are really good for digestion. You may not be able to handle them, and maybe something happens in your stomach, but I would say try to work them into your diet because the more you can, they're really good for all kinds of things. Immunity. So I'm gonna add just a touch of cayenne pepper. And again, I'm gonna use a little bit of the brewer's yeast, otherwise known as nutritional yeast, and I get it in bulk at Whole Foods, which is why it's not in a container, but I'm sure you can find it in some kind of container that somebody sells. I'm probably just gonna add a little, because I'm not adding salt, I'm gonna add a little bit more of it. All right, now I'm gonna get in there with my hands, mix this all around, and massage the kale with my fingers. Once you start massaging the leaves of the kale, it softens it. So if you're ever doing a kale salad for people and you think it's too hard, especially the kind that you get from the farmer's market, which is really good, meaty, thick, curly kale, massage it. It will soften it. It'll be better in your mouth. All right, I think we're good. I don't think I used too much olive oil. My hands are gonna be yellow. I'll warn you ahead of time. All right, so now I'm gonna dump this on my stone baking pan. You don't need to put down any kind of, you can put foil if you want to, or parchment paper, but you don't need to put down oil or anything. You don't need to use any extra fats. So I'm gonna spread it out on my pan, and then I'm gonna put this in the oven at about 350 for about 30 minutes, and then check on it. So after you put the kale chips in at 350 for about 25 to 30 minutes, test it out. Each oven's gonna be slightly different. You want to make sure that it's crispy enough, and how you check once you pull it out is, listen, if it's too soggy, it needs to go back in a little bit longer. So as you can see, our kale chips really shrunk down. And again, these are gonna be thinner. If you use Jacinto kale, Tuscan kale, or farmer's market really beefy, thicker curly kale, they'll be a little more substantial than this. I love making kale chips when I'm having that sort of salty craving for, let's say, potato chips or something, which, by the way, I really don't eat any of that stuff. But when I'm having a little bit of a salt craving and I'm thinking, but I want something healthy, what can I do? I'll make kale chips. It really is very fast and simple. And yes, you do have to wait your 25 or 30 minutes. And it isn't as healthy as the dehydrated raw kale chips that cost $1 million in the store, because they are expensive. But they are yummy. I do love them, and they can be a meal. There's protein and fiber in those kale chips, and they're really good for you, and they're really not that high in calories either. So again, kale chips, spice them how you like, and wait till they sound like that.
The Fit to Love podcast show offers you 6 days a week of helpful content to achieve the happy life you deserve. Movement Mondays and Tasty Tuesdays are weekly videocasts, while Wellness Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays, Freedom Fridays, and Sexy Saturdays are audio-only shows themed every week to address your holistic life and needs. If the show inspired you, we would love for you to share it and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Head on over to fittolove.tv for recaps of every show, resources, and to join the community. That's FIT, the number 2, LOVE.tv. Have a fit and fabulous day.